السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا مولانا محمد رسول الله وآله وأصحابه ومن والاه. اللهم افتح مسامع قلوبنا لذكرك. Ya Allah, please open the hearing channels of our hearts to your dhikr. اللهم لا تكلنا إلى أنفسنا طرفة عين. Ya Allah, please do not entrust us to our own nufus, to our own base drives in ourselves, not even for a moment as brief as the twinkling of the eye. Entrust us only to your merciful love and loving mercy. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Let me now, in my continuation of reminding myself and then you about the essence of Tazkiyatul Nafs, this most essential component of the life of human beings, and therefore particularly in the lives of the believing men and women. Let me, from the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, now begin to share with you a very beautiful statement that I have a very special affinity for, word of one of our saintly early scholars of our predecessors, rahimahullah ta'ala, that once I have read it for the first time, that's years ago, in my khalwat, in my moments alone. I never ceased to love it. I never ceased to ponder about it. I never ceased to learn from it. I never ceased to pray to be in my life and in my character, hopefully, a meager manifestation of what's in those words. And that is, first of all, the saintly scholar is Sayyiduna Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, rahimahullah ta'ala. That great, first of all, not known to the public, not known as a scholar to the public. Most of the Muslims, alhamdulillah, the lay people know him as a wali min awliya and of the most famous of the saints, of the awliya of Allah Azza wa Jal, named by his peers of his time and after that as what? Sultanul Awliya, the Sultan of the awliya, rahimahullah ta'ala. But he was first known as first of all, as a scholar of the law. Most don't know him that he was first of all the Mufti in his time. That is, we're talking about the 5th century Hijri. In his time, the Mufti in the Shafi'i madhab in Baghdad, the capital of the world at that time, the capital of knowledge. And he also was the Mufti in Baghdad in the Hanbali madhab. He's known more as a Hanbali in his fiqh, rahimahullah ta'ala. So he was both scholar Mufti in the Shafi'i as well as in the Hanbali madhab, in the midst of the, mashallah, the galaxy of scholars and scholarship of the time, rahimahullah ta'ala. But mostly through his zuhd and through the spiritual dimension of his knowledge and of his life. A scholar, a full-fledged scholar in the rational sciences, but somehow Allah willed for him to be known more as a spiritual scholar and practitioner and teacher, who spent all his life in that path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I remind myself often from what I learned about his biography, rahimahullah ta'ala, that he, from very early on, from very young age, embarked in the path of ilm, of knowledge, to practice. And he began to teach only at the age of 50. Before that, he felt he was not worthy of teaching. And he was always worthy of teaching, but he felt he was not worthy of teaching. And he would not teach until a spiritual command came to him, not a command from an external teacher of his, no, until in his heart it was spoken to him through angelic manifestations and saintly manifestations and manifestations of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the Sahaba like Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala an, manifestations in his heart which he could even see projected in space-time, ordering him to teach. That's briefly the story of who this man is. He used to say, and this is one of his majalis, this is what he taught in that majlis. Part of what he taught is this. غاية همة المؤمن العارف العالم باب قربه من الحق عز وجل وأن يصل قلبه إليه في الدنيا قبل الآخرة. القرب من باب الحق عز وجل غاية خطوات القلب ومسارة السر. This is the first part. First, he says, رحمه الله تعالى, غاية همة المؤمن. The aim, the ultimate objective and aim or destination of the himmah, of the resolve, of the internal resolve and drive of a mu'min, of a believing person, of a faithful person, mu'min, man or woman. غاية همة المؤمن. To have himmah is something. See, to have a thought is one thing. To have a desire is another thing. To have the himmah for that thought and that desire. The himmah is that internal energetic drive and momentum to do and to execute the desire and the thought. And the positive energy for that. That's why we say sometimes, this person has a great himmah. Or you can say, this person has a great aspirations, but he doesn't have himmah. Has great aspirations, but doesn't have the himmah, the drive towards those aspirations, the strong momentum and energy towards those aspirations. You can say, this person has a lot of ilm, but no himmah. A lot of knowledge, but no himmah to execute that knowledge. وهكذا. So that's himmah. غاية همة المؤمن. The objective, the aim of the himmah of the mu'min who is عارف and عالم. المؤمن العارف العالم. The mu'min who has deep-rooted knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and alim, knowledge of the shara of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because sometimes the ulama, they make a nuance between alim and arif. Alim is the person who has the knowledge of the shara, and arif is the person who has, in addition to the knowledge of the shara, has the knowledge of the inner dimensions of the shara. And sometimes some ulama, I believe like Sidi Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, uses the opposite in my readings of him, uses the alim as higher than arif. And where alim is like arif in the other definition. So he says, a person, in other words, who has true iman and has a strive through iman and has developed this mature consciousness, mental consciousness and emotional consciousness. The aim of his himmah is babu qurbihi min al-haqq azza wa jal. The ultimate goal is the gate of nearness from his Lord, from the haqq subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here he uses, as many of our saintly scholars rahimahumullah ta'ala, the attribute of Allah azza wa jal, al-haqq, because what is perhaps going on inside of them is Allah is al-haqq, of course, and al-haqq contains the meaning of the reality, the truth, the reality, the actuality. In other words, haqq and versus haqq is batil. When something is haqq, other outside of it is batil, falsehood. Real versus unreal. In other words, that which we seek, anything else we seek outside Him Azza wa Jal is in that spiritual dimension and that spiritual lens unreal. So it's not al-haqq. So when they address Allah, they address Him with al-haqq. The only, in the spiritual dimension, when you wear that spiritual lens on your heart, the only reality through that lens is Himself subhanahu wa ta'ala. Seeking anything else is like you're seeking al-adam. You're seeking nothingness. It's not haqq, it's not real. In addition to the meaning of true and so on. So he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, the ultimate aim of the drive in the mu'min, al-arif al-alim, is to reach the gate of nearness of al-haqq azza wa jal. To reach that. وَأَنْ يَصِلَ قَلْبُهُ إِلَيْهِ في الدنيا قبل الآخرة. This is another beautiful addition. And in this aim, is that, of this mu'min, is that his qalb or her qalb, heart, reaches Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, reaches al-haqq subhanahu wa ta'ala in this dunya, in this world, even before the hereafter. أن يصل قلبه إليه في الدنيا قبل الآخرة. That one's heart. And when we say one's heart, we don't mean by that, rahimahumullah ta'ala, they don't mean by that simply this, what, materialistic scientists or doctors call this pump inside of you. Heart is simply a pump to pump blood. That's what they see. That's مبلغهم من العلم. That's the level of their current knowledge, at their level. The qalb is much more than that. Associated with the qalb that is much more than a pump, associated with it is the spiritual dimension of that qalb, which is not physically tangible, yet associated with this physical qalb. That's the qalb they speak of when they say qalb in the spiritual sense. And that qalb arrives to Allah Azza wa Jal, to Al-Haqq Azza wa Jal, in this dunya, in this world, before dying, before akhirah. Allahu Akbar. Now he continues to explain. How is that? Al-Qurb min al-Haqq azza wa jal. Nearness, proximity, closeness to the Haqq, the ultimate reality, the truth, God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nearness to Him is ghayatu, is the destination or the aim behind khatawatul qalb, behind the steps of the heart. The heart has steps, it moves. But now this is not the physical heart, this is not physical motion. I already alluded to that yesterday and day before. Khutawatul qalb, the heart moves. Now the spiritual dimension of the heart moves. It has khutawat, steps, phases, forward, towards Allah Azza wa Jal. Those steps of the heart, the ultimate destination from those steps of the heart is nearness to Allah Azza wa Jal. That is when the heart moves. How does the heart move, as we have explained before? By the phases, the change of phases of the heart, of emotional phases, of spiritual phases, of moral phases, the attributes of the heart. The heart is, for example, in one location spiritually, in one station spiritually, in one condition spiritually. Let's call a station, impatience. And then it changes through training, through contemplation, through muraqabah, through dhikr, through dua, through siyam, through tilawa, etc. It changes to patience. That's a step of the heart forward. Hilm, from a person like me who has no hilm, forbearance that we spoke of, the character of Sayyidina who? Ibrahim and who? And Sayyidina Ismail or Ishaq alayhim salam. That character, you can start at zero. But as one develops hilm, as one becomes imbued with some of the aspects of hilm, that the heart has moved forward. Rahmah, merciful love, or loving mercy. A person begins with a person who is cruel, ruthless, bloodthirsty, vindictive, vengeful against men and women and children, and helpless, weak or strong. Begins with lack of rahmah and improves through struggle, through dua, through dhikr, through siyam. Improves to become more compassionate, more merciful, more lovingly merciful. That's how the heart moved forward, step forward. A person inside who is greedy, self-admiring, pretentious, for example, and begins to change to generous, less greedy, less greedy, less greedy, generous, more generous. For example, that's the heart has moved forward. وَهَكَذَا وَقِسْ عَلَى ذَلِكَ. And you can yourself now think of other examples and other characteristics inside of us to change. That's the khatawatul qalb. Khatawatul qalb. An attachment to dunya, to wealth, to power, to self begins to diminish, to build more attachments of hubb, love, or of reverence, towards Allah Azza wa Jal. The heart has moved forward. Less of me indulging me and more of obeying Allah and indulging the needs of others, for they are pleasing to Allah. And I feel it from inside of me. That's a heart moving forward. Khushu', lack of khushu' to khushu' in salah and outside of salah. From lack of khushu' in salah to more khushu', because khushu', the seat of khushu' is the heart. And also outside of my salah, in my daily mundane activities, khushu' or no khushu'. If there is more khushu', the qalb moves forward. هذه هي خطوات القلب. So he says, رحمه الله تعالى, غاية خطوات القلب القرب من الحق عز وجل. The ultimate end is to move forward, to draw nearer to Allah Azza wa Jal. These are the steps of the hearts. To draw nearer to Allah Azza wa Jal. Because those characteristics that develop inside of us, as you heard, are all beautiful, divinely sanctioned characteristics. And each one of those characteristics, Allah has those characteristics, those sifat, at the divine, perfect, infinite level. So when I, as a creature, develop those attributes at my human level, in the best potential possible way, then my internal characteristics become projections at my human level of whose characteristics? Of the divine subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's how we are near. And I explained yesterday, two persons are very close to one another on account of sharing the same characteristics and attributes. فَقُرْبُنَا مِنَ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ, or drawing nearer to Allah Azza wa Jal, when our character, when our inner image, when our qulub are adorned with characteristics that in the infinite scope are divine, but at our scope they are finite and limited. And that's how we draw nearer to Allah Azza wa Jal. That's why it is matter simply of khuluq, a matter of your inner image. And we shall elaborate more on that inshallah ta'ala. وَمَسَارَةُ السِّرِّ. Masara, again, the walk, tracing a path, a masara. You know, you walk a path and you leave a trace. That's مسارتك. سرت في هذا الطريق. سرت يعني you took this path, you walked it. So when you walked it, it becomes your masara, your trajectory that you walked, the path that you walked. Of the sir. The sir here, when they use it, rahimahullah ta'ala, they mean it's a dimension in the spiritual realm deeper than the heart, deeper than the qalb. It's another hidden dimension, because we have the physical dimension of the physical heart. A hidden dimension at the next level of that physical heart is the qalb in the spiritual sense. When they say qalb, it's a hidden dimension. Then hidden than that one, deeper than that one, is something they call a sir. And they draw that all from the words in the Quran and the words in the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Whereas sometimes they mention the sir as the seat where the ruh connects. وهكذا. مسارة السر, and the walk path of your sir. The changes also that take place, the maturity that takes place in your sir. That's how you get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The aim of that is closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَسَارَةُ السِّرِّ, said he. That's number one. Now he sets that first. Then he tells you, then he tells us, and he tells his audience, rahimahullah ta'ala. His words were very simple. He did not use sophisticated classical Arabic language. He used almost the spoken language. Of course, in Baghdad, in that time. And it is simple, very direct, to scholars and to people. He said, Inni araka. Now he's addressing everybody. Scholars, people in da'wah, students, murids, lay people, everybody. And he says, Inni araka fi qiyamin wa qu'udin wa ruku'in wa sujudin wa saharin wa ta'abin wa qalbuka لم يبرح أو لا يبرح عن مكانه. First, this part. He says, I see you in qiyam and in qu'ud. Qiyam, standing, sitting. That is qiyam in ibadah, qiyam al-layl, in qiyam, standing, performing responsibilities of knowledge, of ilm, of teaching, of learning, doing things, actively doing things, acting, action, in qiyam and in qu'ud, and sitting intermittently, sitting in ibadah, sitting for action, to prepare for action, qiyam wa qu'ud, in dhikr. And I see you in ruku'. Ruku', you all know ruku'. In ruku' in your salah, in kneeling in your salah, in ruku' and in sujood. I see you doing all of that. In ruku' and in sujood. Did he do any of those? Did he? He did. He did plenty of that. He would incapacitate you in his ibadah. But he's speaking, he's saying something. Wait. He says, I can see that. He's not saying that this is wrong. He says, I can see that. In ruku' and in sujood, in prostration, in sahar and in ta'ab, spending sleepless nights and subject to tiredness and fatigue, hard work. I see all of that. I see all of these actions. However, وَقَلْبُكَ لَا يَبْرَحُ عَنْ مَكَانِهِ. However, your heart, I see, is not moving at all. However, I see your heart stationary, stagnant, immobile, did not move, did not change. That's it. Teacher, preacher, da'iyah, alim, action, activist, kada. But still inside arrogant, deluded, selfish, ostentatious, fiercely competitive for leadership, greedy. The qalb didn't change, didn't go forward. You still lie, you still backbite, you still cheat, you still love yourself more. قلبك لا يبرح عن مكانه. It didn't change. Your qalb is not soft, it's still rude and tough. It still is not moistened with hubb, love. قلبك لا يبرح عن مكانه. It did not move an inch, spiritual inch. You are where you are, like one running on a treadmill, running and running and running and running. And you sweat, and then where did you go physically? Nowhere. Running and running in salah, in dhikr, in dua, in kada, in activity, in action, in kada, all of that, in teaching, in preaching, in arguing, in debating, in kada. And your qalb didn't change. وقلبك لا يبرح عن مكانه ولا يخرج من بيت وجوده. ولا يخرج من بيت وجوده. And your heart is still to exit and to leave from the room, the space, the house of its own existence, i.e., besides your own wujud, your own existence, you're not, you don't pay attention, you don't realize other realms of existence. All what is your wujud, your existence, this existence, bayt wujudik. So he calls that bayt. Now you're confined in a house. And the space of that house is all the world you see and you care for. And that's your wujud, your existence, your person. In other words, what is important to you selfishly, personally, whether it is intellectually or emotionally or physically or economically or whatever. لم تخرج, your heart did not leave, did not exit from this space of your own wujud, of your own existence. And he says further, وَلَمْ يَتَحَوَّلْ عَنْ عَادَتِهِ. Thirdly, and your heart is still to change direction from its own habits. The habits you have developed, we have developed habits, the customs, the habits we have developed. We all have habits. Some are positive, some are negative. Some are virtuous, some are evil. But there are those of us who don't look at our habits as compartmentalized, as evil and good. No, my habit is my habit. That's the way I am. My habit, and I enforce my habits, and I seek that which enforce my habits. I'm used to whether those habits are social, physical habits, or emotional habits, or intellectual habits. You understand? Intellectual habits. I'm used to something intellectually. Not that necessarily it is justifiable. ولا يتحول عن عادته, whatever that ada is. I see that none of that change. There is no change. There is no forward steps of the heart towards Allah Azza wa Jal. There is motion external, like on a treadmill, but that leads to no advanced condition inside of you, because we do not approach the divine geographically and physically. We approach the divine spiritually. And the change has to occur in our spiritual dimension, in our qulub, in our asrar, in our arwah, in our nufus, basically first. So he said, rahimahullah ta'ala, I see that. Now he begins to express in this grand way the solution. Usduq. Number one. What is it? Usduq. Sadq. The beginning of our chapter in this course, in this fellowship of Tazkiyah. We started this time with Sadq. Companionship and Sidq. Ittaqullaha wa kunu ma'a as-sadiqin. Remember that. That's how we started. That's what I pledged to you and you pledged to me to always keep in mind. Sidq. First, he says, first step is internal first. Usduq fi talabi mawlak. Have sidq, have honesty, sincerity, truthfulness, transparency, innocence in your claim of seeking Allah Azza wa Jal, your Lord. Usduq fi talabi mawlak. That claim of desire to want Him, to seek Him, first let that claim inside of you, and only Allah knows, and you know yourself inside of you. First of all, rectify that. Make sure there is sidq. And I mentioned to you yesterday and the day before some aspects of sidq, what may construe that which is incongruent and inconsistent with sidq. Remember that. Such as, don't litigate for yourself. Don't defend yourself. Don't justify yourself. Oh no, it is this because I... Usduq fi talabi mawlak. Usduq fi talabi mawlak. That's where it begins. Usduq fi talabi mawlak. In your seeking, talab, I seek, I desire, I want, I beg, I ask for. Usduq fi talabi mawlak. Ajib. He's telling us, therefore, that many of us, perhaps most of us, we have not yet لم نتحقق ولم نتخلق بصفة الصدق بعد. And I spoke to you earlier about تعلق and تحقق and تخلق. We are yet to achieve any one of those levels in the character of صدق. Make sure to work on that. And it is burst inside of you by removing inside of my mind and inside my emotions that which impedes it, that which is an obstacle against it. For example, to associate another drive with it. And instead of full throttle towards seeking Him, well, there is this thing here, I'm going to take this too, I'm going to attach myself to this too, which is not necessary. If you seek Him, don't build other attachments unnecessary other than Him. Everything should be within the channels of seeking Him. Usduq fi talabi mawlak. For example, let's say I hear that my friend, my dearest friend, is in trouble. As I hear that, if that friendship truly exists and that love truly exists, it's going to do something inside of me, a burst of I'm going to run to help him. Now I'm running to help him. Something on the way says, come. Okay. And I go and entertain that. And then I run. And then another one, I entertain, then I run. That's not sidqun fi talab. That's not sincerity and truthfulness and sidq in that friendship and in me claiming to run to help. Yes, I'm helping, I'm running, but there is lack here of sidq. Ikhlas. Sidq sometimes and ikhlas sometimes are synonymous. أصدق في طلب مولاك. Have that sidq in my claim of seeking and desiring my Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala, my master, Allah azza wa jal. أصدق في طلب مولاك. And if you do that, فقد أغناك صدقك عن كثير من التعب. And if you have sidq, now with that condition, with that internal condition, if you develop it, it's an asl. That asl, if you have it, it will suffice you against much hardships of work that you do. In other words, if you have sidq, you will run faster and do and expend less energy to arrive. If you have sidq, the traveling, the journey will be easier and faster. أصدق في طلب مولاك وقد أغناك صدقك عن كثير من التعب. If you have that sidq, it will be in lieu of a lot of hard work and a lot of fatigue. فقد أغناك صدقك عن كثير من التعب. And then he says, and he begins now a little more detail about how to liberate the heart, how to liberate oneself. And then he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, انقر بيضة وجودك بمنقار صدقك. Remember he said, your wujud, the bait of your wujud first. Your heart did not move, did not come out of the house of its own existence. You're confined to that. Now he says, now you become a seeker, and a seeker is like an embryo, is like a fetus inside an egg. First of all, before we mature spiritually, we are simply aware of our own wujud, of our own existence. And that's like being in an egg, and the yolk inside an egg. But of course, we don't see it that way. Those who are in this dimension know that it's just an egg, and an egg inside of it is a yolk, is not completely formed even. But the one inside the yolk, you, I, because of that immaturity of the qalb, we think that's the only world that exists. There is no other dimension. There is no other existence except what I am aware of. Me. So he says, first step, unqur. Look at this beautiful metaphor. Like you're an egg, and in an egg there is the fledgling. Unqur, then you grow, and that's not all the world. Now you have a beak inside of you. Break the shell of the egg with the beak of your sidq. If you have sidq in seeking him, أصدق في طلب مولاك, that would be the metaphor of having this instrument, this beak from which you break out of the dimension of constriction in your own existence, of that egg. Because the divine subhanahu wa ta'ala is the beyond. And you're constrained in your mind and your emotions, in your feelings, in your perception of life and of existence, as though you are in an egg. But you think, and most people, and the mushrik and the kafir, think that's existence. Unqur, the way to exit from it, from that constriction of viewing existence in this way, what is it? صدق 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 في طلب مولاك أصدق في طلب مولاك انقر بمنقار صدقك بيضة وجودك. And then when you do that, if you do that, you come out inside of you, inside of your emotions, inside of your mind, inside of your hearts, to a vaster world, but still constricted world. Because the next thing he says, when you get out of that, you'll find yourself in a bigger space, but surrounded with tall, fortified walls. And what does he say to that? انقض حيطان رؤيتك للخلق والتقيد بهم بمعاول الإخلاص وتوحيدك. Allahu Akbar. He said, then, come on, that's still a constricted world, like if you get out of an egg and you are in a confined space with tall walls, impenetrable tall walls. What are those tall walls? They're just a metaphor. رؤيتك للخلق والتقيد بهم. That is, when one is so dependent in his notion, in his conception, in his perception of everything created, the makhluqat, the created things, with soul and without soul. رؤيتك للخلق, meaning as one behaves and interacts with creatures, let's say, first of all, human beings or animals or kada. We interact with them on the basis of realizing and feeling they have authority to help or not to help, to hurt or not to hurt, to benefit or not to benefit, to keep life and to destroy life. We are in other words, too obsessed and too conscious of them as independent entities in terms of owning that which we seek and we need. رؤية الخلق. For example, it's literally to see the khalq. That means seeing them with your heart, meaning giving them weight which they essentially, intrinsically, they do not have. Only Allah has. And I become too confined in that reality. Those are the walls that confine my existence, that I have to break. But how to break them? We'll continue that inshallah ta'ala the next time we meet. وصلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين وأصحابه الميامين والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.